Well, hello and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint podcast number 275, recorded live on Monday, January 4th, 2016. That's right, the very first podcast of 2016. Only 4 days in, but we're hitting it hard, we're hitting it fast. I am your host, Todd Klindt, and I'll be guiding you this year through the journey that is Todd Klindt's SharePoint podcast. While we're doing this, I would be remiss. I would be terribly ungrateful if I didn't throw a shout out to my employers, the fine folks at Rackspace. You can check out all the great SharePoint products we have at sharepoint.rackspace.com. And we're not a one-trick pony. We do all kinds of other hosting as well. So check out our other sites at www.rackspace.com/Microsoft and find out the other things we do, Link and Exchange and Azure and all the Office 365, the whole thing. If Microsoft makes it and it's cool and we can host it, we do, then it's all at www.rackspace.com/Microsoft. And of course, not to be outdone, I also have a website. You can go to toddklindt.com/blog and read about all my blogging things. I'm also on Twitter at Todd Klindt and all the other social things, though I don't do much with them, but at Todd Klindt is the place to go all over the internet. Thank goodness there's not a lot of other Todd Klindts out there, so every time I can a new social thing comes up, I can grab Todd Klindt right away, and I don't have to be, tklint6742 or anything like that. TK421, nothing like that. Okay. Let's move on to our first set of production notes for the year. Really not a lot of production notes to talk about this year. We didn't have a podcast last year because I was traveling and things like that. I'd taken the last couple of weeks of the year off. Rackspace has this deal where if we don't take our vacation by the end of the year, we lose it. And before they put that in place, I didn't take vacation hardly ever, and it just sat there and went unused. But as soon as I found out they were going to try to take it away from us, then I had to take it all. So the last couple of weeks of the year, didn't do anything, but was out of town last week, and so didn't do a podcast, was traveling. Actually, and it worked out. Ended up staying in a hotel room and almost getting blizzarded, and the weather was pretty nasty here in Iowa a week ago. So not a lot for production notes because it's been a couple of weeks since we've done this. But I do want to mention, for those of you that haven't heard already, doing a little charity drive, our annual charity drive. So Lori's birthday was a couple of weeks ago, and my birthday is coming up here in a couple of weeks. And so that month between our birthdays, Lori and Dan Usher originally started this. They do a charity drive. And it's not like your typical charity drive. I'm not asking you for money. I don't want your money. Well, I do want your money, but it would just be tacky if I asked for it. But what we are asking is, if you feel so inclined, we would like you to just donate to a charity of your choice. And when you do that, though, if you donate to a charity of your choice and you do it because of this podcast or because of a blog post that I wrote or something like that, I want you to go out to pointgowin.com. That's Lori's last name, pointgowin.com/TK charity. Well, actually, her last name's not Point Gowan. Her last name is just Gowan, but pointgowin.com/TK charity. Go out there and you can read the thing and fill out a form and tell us how much you donated. And again, it can be to any charity that you want, something that's special to you, whatever. We do have some out there. If you don't know who to donate to, you're just feeling very generous and want to donate, we have some out there that you can donate to, but make it something that's meaningful for you. We're just trying to get people, get their altruistic juices flowing and get there and out there. We're doing something special this year. For over the last couple of years, Lori's really taken this and ran with it. And you'll notice she's got a chart there that shows how much we've raised every year. You can definitely tell when she kicked in and started banging the drum on this, because the amount of money that you guys gave went up significantly. Back in the old days, we've been doing this for like 6 years now. Back in the old days, I would match the amount of money that you guys would donate, because it was like, $500, $600, something like that. Then a couple of years ago, it got a little rich. Started measuring it in thousands and not hundreds anymore. And so I kind of backed off on that whole matching funds thing. But last year was a really good success, and Lori wanted to hit even higher last year. And so I talked to my wife, and I'm not going to get any birthday presents this year, but we are going to match the funds. So however much you guys donate and tally up with Lori, I will match to the charities of my choice at the end. So again, my birthday is January 21st, so you have until then, or a couple days before that, to donate money. And then whatever the final tally is, I will donate that amount of money to some charities. So Lori and I talked about this a few weeks ago, and I talked to my wife, and we kind of tried to decide how much this was going to be and all that. And she said, yeah, we can do it. As of today, I looked this afternoon, for this year alone, we have raised $2,600. $2,600 has been donated so far. That means I'm also going to be donating another $2,600. But as painful as that sounds for me, I love it. I love seeing you guys do that. So go out there and hit it hard. Let's get that. Lori's got some goals. I don't know what they are for this year, but let's hit them and let's go out there and donate some money. Do some good out there. Help some folks out. It feels good. I like doing it. All right, let's go on to our topics. Now, I mentioned that I have not worked the last couple of weeks. And because of that, I'm kind of light on topics, sort of. So basically, the things we're going to talk about this week are just the things that were sitting around in my browser windows. I quit working, a couple of weeks ago, didn't really do much with this machine right here, and came back today and tried to remember my passwords and all that kind of stuff. And, I just had tabs open that I had open for a while with things in them. And so that's kind of some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, just because I just haven't done a lot of work. So normally I talk about things that I've been working on. I just haven't been working on much. But so that's what we're going to talk about here for tonight. But again, new year, very glad to be back for, I think, my 7th year. This thing started in 2009, so it's my 7th calendar year doing that. Made some changes last year, brought some guests on, did some things like that. Going to be doing more of that this year. There's going to be a few more changes coming. And when they kind of get final, I will talk to you about that. But some other things, some tie-ins, things like that. So I'm looking forward to all that this year. I want to kind of put some stuff in. I kind of got lazy a couple of years for the last couple of years. Haven't been doing much and need to kick it in. So Joanne in the chat room is saying this is season 7. So I think season 7 probably will start in April. I think my first podcast was March something of 2009. So I do like that. Remind me of that in March or April. I'm going to do a season 7. Maybe I'll do a season 6 cliffhanger. Oh, somebody write that down. Lori put that in the notes. Something we're going to do that. We're going to do a season 6 cliffhanger, then the first episode of season 7. I like that idea. I like where your head's at, Joanne. I like that. So again, just kind of a wrap up of some of the tabs that were open in my browser when I got into work this morning. The first one is one that my friend Jason Himmelstein sent me a while back, sent me a couple of weeks ago, and I don't think I've done a podcast. Well, I think I've done one podcast since he sent that out, but it is a Office team blog post on the changes to the OneDrive for Business client. And the title is OneDrive for Business Update on Storage Plans and Next Generation Sync Client. So first, the storage plans, as we all know, the storage plans around OneDrive, whatever, got very confusing last year. And that was the OneDrive consumer thing that was unlimited and now is limited. And if you haven't done it, go out to the URL. I talked about it a couple of podcasts ago, but originally they said everybody was going to get dropped back to 5 gig. And then a bunch of people got really mad. And they said, okay, if you've got a starting amount that's more than 5 gig, go to this URL and we'll let you keep it. Go out to that URL and I'll put it in the show notes. I don't have it in front of me. So do that. But that's OneDrive consumer. That's OneDrive not for business, but OneDrive for pleasure, as we have been calling it here. Though that whole mess happened last year. At the end of last year, Jeff Teeper put out a blog post that talked about the OneDrive for Business storage plans. So this is not the thing that was the mess before, the OneDrive consumer. This is OneDrive for Business. And his blog post kind of covered 2 things. One of them was the storage plans. And he talked about how there's a bunch of these OneDrive for Business tiers, and I don't have them all, but the ones that I care about are the enterprise, like E3, E4, and E5 tiers, will move to unlimited storage. Now, there's the obvious joke about, I remember the last time you gave us unlimited storage, but as far as we know, it's really going to be unlimited. And since you're paying for this OneDrive, I feel good about that. So they're going to start rolling it out, and what that's going to look like is right now you've got a terabyte, and so that's what your quota looks like. And if you look in there, it shows a terabyte. That's going to get bumped up to 5 terabytes. which for all practical purposes for OneDrive for Business is unlimited. But if, however, whatever, you get your 1 terabyte and it gets bumped up to 5 terabytes, if you need more than 5 terabytes, there's a process in place where you can call them and they'll bump your quota up. But for the E3, E4, E5, and there's some other plans that are in there, you're going to get bumped up to unlimited storage in OneDrive for Business. So that's good. The other plans that aren't covered by the unlimited, they're going to go up to 1 terabyte. So there's a bunch of plans. There's schools and all kinds of things. And if you go to the webpage on blogs.office.com and read that blog post, they talk about that. They've got it all laid out. Doesn't make for very compelling audio, though, to list through all those plans. But if you've got E3, E4, or E5, you're going to see your 1 terabyte bump up to 5 terabytes, which is essentially unlimited. So it doesn't do you any good to have unlimited storage in OneDrive for Business if the client won't let you actually upload everything, if you can't actually upload things. So the second part of this blog post is that they've released the next generation client. Those names always bug me because then what's going to happen when they release the next generation of the client? How will we refer to this generation of the client? You remember that last version, the next generation one? Anyway, very confusing. But the next gen client for OneDrive is rolling out. It's out now if you want to grab it. And they've got some notes on that. One of them was apparently, and this is news to me, it's a good thing the internet's out there to keep me up to speed on this. Apparently some folks were having problems with the OneDrive client. Who has problems with OneDrive? Who are these people that are living under rocks having problems with the OneDrive client? I want to see them. Where are you? Raise your hands. Yeah, apparently there was some problems with that. And so they're saying the first thing they did is they fixed a bunch of the stability issues. And it's been my experience that they mostly have. But they added a bunch of functionality too. And the big things at the top of the list are selective sync now, which is something that the OneDrive consumer client also added a while back. But this is the idea that you can have 5 terabytes, virtually unlimited, though technically not unlimited, 5 terabytes of stuff in the cloud, but you don't have to sync 5 terabytes down to your machine. So I've got a tablet somewhere on this desk. If I look, I can find my tablet. But the tablet devices have limited amount of storage, 32 gig, 64 gig, something like that. So you don't want to sync your entire OneDrive for Business down to that. So now you have selective sync where you can pick specific folders and like that you can sync. So that's good. That's kind of the way things are going. The other thing is they've got support now for files up to 10 gigabytes. So that's good. The previous limit was 2 gigabytes. Now that you can get 10 gigabytes synced up there, and supposedly they actually sync, I guess. I haven't tried it yet. And then there was a sync limit of 20,000 files, and they've removed that as well. So that's all good. That's all sunshine. Yay, this new next-gen sync client, poorly named, but lots of great stuff. Well, it's not all roses and kittens. There are a few gotchas. The first one is it's not for Windows 8.1. So it's for Windows 7 and Windows 8 and Windows 10, but not Windows 8.1. Now, you're probably asking yourself, why not Windows 8.1? How did this one in the middle get left out? For those of you that are running Windows 8.1, you'll remember that they kind of integrated OneDrive into the OS, and you had these, shadow files and things like that. And it's a little different story. Things are wedged in a little tighter. So it will eventually be 8.1 compatible, but for now it's not. You need to be on Windows 10 or Windows 7 or Windows 8 or something like that. The other thing that's kind of sad is that it's not for on-prem SharePoint right now. It's only for Office 365, SharePoint Online kind of things. So if you're using SharePoint on-prem, and let's be honest, we all are, then you need to run the old generation OneDrive for Business client and the next generation business client. So maybe it's the previous generation OneDrive. Anyway, those names next. Anyway, but you can run them side by side. They will work together. The plan eventually, obviously, is to roll SharePoint on-prem into the next gen client. That's obviously the idea. But they wanted to get it out there until as soon as they could. So they got that. The other thing they mentioned in this blog post is that the mobile clients for OneDrive have also been updated. And they look pretty cool. I've got Android now. We've all heard the sad story about how I switched from Windows Phone to Android, and I've got OneDrive on here. And somewhat related, one of the things that was like the thing that kept me from moving off of Windows Phone, but then when it changed was what let me do that, is the updated OneDrive client for Android and Office Lens for Android. I couldn't live without Office Lens. Office Lens is a program originally for Windows Phone, but now for all the major OSs, Android and Windows Phone, and I will throw iOS in there too, iOS also. But Office Lens is a program that lets you use your phone's camera, and it uses it like a scanner, and it can scan business cards or whiteboards or receipts or whatever. And it does a lot of really great things with framing and cropping and all that. But then once you get your image, you've got a bunch of options for where to put that image. You can put it in OneDrive, you can put it in OneNote, you can make a PDF out of it, you can make a Word document out of it, you can do all these crazy things. I was never going to be able to move off of Windows Phone onto Android until that existed on Android. And so that's part of this whole thing, is that client. So if you've got OneDrive clients out there on your phones and your tablets, go ahead and update those and get it updated on your not Windows 8.1 device, and enjoy that. That's good stuff. Microsoft kind of screwed up with OneDrive. They fell behind. I think they're trying to remedy that. The next gen client is a good step in that direction. So grab that. Another Office 365-ish topic, and I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this because I got a bunch of things that I want to talk about, but they released in November, and I kind of wish I'd talked about earlier, a public preview of modern authentication for Office 365 and the Office clients. Security is kind of a big deal, and you don't have to watch the news very long to hear about somebody getting hacked or getting compromised or something like that. And one of the new things that, well, not new anymore, but one of the things that cloud providers and all that have done to reduce your chances of being hacked is to enable things like two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. The problem becomes that when they change authentication, everything that authenticates against that has to know. And that was one of the problems with the Office clients, that if you had crazy secure two-factor auth in Office 365, your clients had problems getting into it. And so this blog post from November talks about how the Office 2013 and 2016 clients now understand what they're calling modern authentication. So you can go into your Microsoft Online products, SharePoint Online, Link, and Exchange, and all that kind of stuff, and turn on multi-factor authentication, and then continue to use your client's Outlook and Word and those kind of things. This is something that you should be considering. And I say this for, the Microsoft properties I talked about, but if you use any cloud things, and I'm talking Dropbox or Box or Facebook or Twitter, they all these days have multi-factor auth options. And it's things like, well, I'll talk about Microsoft accounts. So OneDrive and all that has two-factor auth. Whenever you sign up a new machine and attach it to your Microsoft account, they text you a code that you have to put in. So two-factor auth, the way that I like to explain it, if I have to explain two-factor auth to my mom, the way I explain it is one-factor auth, you need a password, something you know, or in her case, something you can forget. With multi-factor authentication, you start with something you know, or again, in her case, something you can forget, and then something you have. And that something that you have can be a key fob, like my RSA fob from Rackspace, or it can be a text message to your phone or something else, but it's something you know and something you have. So that is what the two-factor auth is. But again, when I'm talking to my mom, it's something she can forget and it's something she can lose. But you got to put it in terms that she can understand. But all of these cloud providers have that. Again, Google and Facebook and Twitter and all these folks, think about trying it out. Think about using it, because I mean, just this last week, there was a story about PayPal, who also offers a two-factor auth, and how one of the big security guys on the internet, Brian Krebs, how his account got hacked. Now, probably not a great example because he already had that stuff on there, and PayPal just let it slide through. But the bad guys are out there. Two-factor auth is one of the things that can slow them down. So, yeah, so in the chat room, I'm talking about, I pull up my Rackspace thing, and Jason, who's a coworker of mine, it talks about how I wear my badge when I'm in my home office, and it's adorable. That is how seriously we take security in the Ames office for Rackspace. You got to be wearing your fob or you can't come in the door. That's just all there is to it. The security folks here, they're terrible. They're really, actually, the reason, he's right, he's absolutely right, Jason, I do video calls all the time. I absolutely do wear it at my desk. The real reason, though, is because I wear headphones, and my headphones have a volume control thing, and they have a clip. And so if I'm not wearing a shirt that I can clip this to, I wear my badge so I can clip it to that. But no, it's really because of the security guy. But so think about that. And if you've got an Office 365 tenant, start playing with that. The good news is for Office 365 and Azure AD and all those things, you can turn two-factor on, but you don't have to turn it on for everybody. So you can turn it on for a couple of test accounts or your IT group or whatever, and figure out where the rough spots are before you unleash it on all of your users. But you should definitely be doing that. All right, the next topic, this one, and I know I'm going to catch some flack for this one, but I did want to let you guys know that the client-side object model for Office 365 was a new version of that was released a couple of months ago. Sometime again, I've had some of these things stacked up forever, but this is CSOM, client-side object model for Office 365, but it also works with SharePoint 2013, SharePoint 2016. This is that idea that developers can write code that sit on the client side, so in your browser typically, but I'll get to that in a second, instead of on the server side, so there's less vulnerability, less security stability issues on your server. And they released a NuGet package where you can download all the CSOM things for that, the DLL, so that you can create these things on the client side. Now, you're probably asking yourself, I know what Todd's talking about this. He's a big fat developer. He loves developing clickety-click Visual Studio. I got some nasty tweets today about mentioning Visual Studio in my one of my previous podcasts. Who was that brought that up? Jeff Jones was disparaging me on Twitter a couple hours ago. I don't bring this up because I do any developing. I don't do any developing, but I bring this up because CSOM is the great way to bridge those blank spaces that we have for PowerShell that the Office 365 PowerShell commandlets don't have. And that's why CSOM is important. Now, there's a bunch of resources out there like the CSOM, PNP stuff. I can't remember what PNP stands for. But there's a bunch of pieces of code out there that we can use with PowerShell that utilize this client-side object model, because PowerShell in this case is just a client. And so it can do these client-side things. And that's why we care, is PowerShell. And yes, the PNP is patterns and practices. That's exactly what I'm looking for. But the patterns and practices, if you haven't looked at it, even if you're not a developer, and I'm not a developer, patterns and practices is Microsoft's guidance for how you can develop against Office 365 and SharePoint. But again, for PowerShell, it's the same thing. So all those frustrations that you have when you try to use PowerShell with SharePoint Online, CSOM is the way to get around that. Patterns and practices is the way to steal somebody else's code and not have to write it yourself. So that's why I want to bring that up to you guys. A couple of other things that were out there that I saw that took my fancy and tickled it. First, though, a drink. Ames does have good tap water. Another thing that I saw out there a while back was a bulk user profile updater. So this is part of patterns and practices. This is on GitHub, and this is part of the Office Dev patterns and practices. This is an executable you can use, and it will go out to something like an LDAP provider. That's the example that they gave here. An LDAP provider, pull down all the profiles, and then using web services, push all of those profiles into Office Online or on-prem or something. So this bulk user profile updater applies to Office 365, multi-tenant, and dedicated if you've got that. SharePoint 2013 on-prem, they don't call out 2016, but I assume if it doesn't support it now, it will. SharePoint 2016 is in preview, so Microsoft gets really weird about saying that production things support preview things. But this is a way to fill all that information in if you've got some weird thing and you can't use a regular profile sync. Great functionality, great ability to have. test it first, play with it in a non-production tenant or a non-production farm. It's a little weird. It's not how we're used to doing things. Now there's XML files and CSV files and things and stuff. So be aware of that, but it's functionality that you're probably going to want to use. So that's good. One thing to keep in mind is, I see I did too much pasting here. I think there's some pieces of this that we know that in the background, the authentication in Office 365 is Azure AD. Some of these things are kind of wonky that they get updated and they don't end up in Azure AD. So again, this is one of those things that you want to test when you update things. Make sure that you're checking Azure AD has what you're looking for as well. Speaking of Azure AD, I found this nice set of documents. It's one document, but it's got links to a bunch of other documents on design consideration overview for Azure Active Directory hybrid scenarios. So we're all going to do it. If you're not already doing Azure AD and Azure AD Connect and getting your on-prem Windows Active Directory to your Azure Active Directory and mixing them all up like chocolate and peanut butter, if you're not already doing that, not already up to your elbows in that, you're going to be eventually, or you're going to be working on some other technology. That's just the way this is going. But it's kind of big, and I play with it a bunch, and I still find this stuff all the time. And this document is good for kind of walking you through, leading you through by the hand, the things to consider when you want to take your on-prem Windows Active Directory and start pushing pieces of it into Azure Active Directory. And it's great. It's all in order, and it's got links that you can click to take you all over. So if you're going to be doing that, give this document, this webpage, an overview. And this is on azure.microsoft.com. For those of you that are listening to this in your cars and are blessed with the audio only version that doesn't have my face, all these links are be in my show notes. And you can find those at toddklindt.com/podcast275. And all the links will be in there. Something that is close to that, the Azure AD thing is a document, and this came up. This was a question I had to answer a couple of weeks ago, and I meant to mention it to you guys and forgot about it. But it is a list of the attributes that the Azure AD Connect tool does sync. So you've obviously got a schema in your Windows Active Directory and a different schema, similar but different schema in Azure Active Directory. This document on azure.microsoft.com walks through all of the different properties for Exchange and for Office 365 and all that do or do not get synced up, and then any notes that you have with them. So if you're doing anything crazy with extended attributes or using attributes for decisions and things like that, check this document out and make sure that the attribute that you're going to hang your business on or make decisions based on is getting synced around the way that you think that it's getting synced around. So that's a handy one to have. That's a good one to bookmark, because that's going to come up once in a while. And you're going to, when you set this up, you're going to set all your attributes up and have everything going. Then you're going to forget about it. And months later, something's not going to work and you're not going to remember where to look for that. So this document will have that, and hopefully they'll keep it up to date if they changed it. All right, a couple of minutes here for fun things. This one was, I was reminded about by one of the hooligans who's in the chat room right now, John Liu. So John, he and some other folks have conspired, and people talk and they make up stories. And when you're on the internet, you really can't believe anything that you hear or read or anything like that. But John and some of the other hooligans have it in their head that I have a lot of Windows tablets, that I have a problem, I think is the word that they've used. And they've tried to stage interventions, but John is about as far away from me on Earth as two humans can get. He's in Australia in the southern hemisphere, and I'm in Iowa in the northern hemisphere. And again, a long time ago, there was this website, and I think it was called like Earth Sandwich or something, and it would tell you what was exactly opposite of you on Earth. The idea being that if two people were opposite of each other and they both put a piece of bread on the ground, it was an Earth sandwich. I know it's kind of lame, but anyway, the place that is the farthest away from me on Earth is west of Australia there. So John is about as far away from me as you can get. But anyway, so these rumors are going around about me having too many tablets. So John sent me this link to a Microsoft page, account.microsoft.com/devices. And this lists all of the devices that you have registered with Microsoft by logging in with your Live ID, Passport ID, Microsoft ID, whatever they're calling it this week. Logged into a device and registered it, or filled out a warranty card or whatever. And so he sends this to me. And he's like, just curious what your number is. He makes it sound like we've just started dating, and he wants to know my number. So I looked in it, and I don't know. I assumed that I'm average here, but I went to account.microsoft.com/devices, and it showed 12 devices under my Live ID, and it lists what they are: phone, computer, blah, 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 whatever. And I had 8 that showed up as tablet. Now, in my defense, one of those is a Surface Pro 2 that I used for my daily driver for a long time and has served me well. But yes, John, the number 12 devices, 8 tablets in there. So I hope you're happy. But for those of you that don't have mean friends like I do, like John, and just want to kind of see what's out there, that's also where you would go if you wanted to do the find my PC thing or find my phone. You can get it in there too. But that's just a good little place to jump in and see what's there. I liked it. And the last one is this. Oh, this, I was so excited. So I was on vacation last week. When did this get published? I think before I left. No, it was right. Okay. So I was on vacation last week, and I was out of town, and I was in a place that didn't have great internet and all that. But I saw this is something that I've literally been wanting this for months, and finally the internet did me well. So I've got Windows 10 all over, hither and yon, Windows 10 devices. One of the things that I love about Windows 10 is this thing called Windows Spotlight. And Windows Spotlight is the pictures that Windows 10 shows you before you log in. So there'll be some great landscape picture of some flowing river, some waterfall or something, or some mountain, some great thing. And if you've got, well, I suppose if you don't have a touchscreen device, it works too. But there's a thing in it's got a little heart. You can say, yes, I like this. And it sends you more pictures like that. I love those pictures. They're just so well done. And they're just so beautiful and epic and all that. And I thought, those would be great to have for like screen or wallpapers or whatever. But there was never any way to download those. And I remember a couple of months ago trying to figure out a way to do that, and there wasn't really a great way. But last week on the 29th, Windows Central published an article, How to Save All Windows Spotlight Lock Screen Images. And it was like the clouds parted and the angels sang and the beam of sunlight came down. Oh, this was exactly the thing that I was looking for. So what they figured out, and it was Daniel Rubino, I think, was the guy that published it. I don't know if you figured it out. But there's this long, convoluted, nasty path where Windows saves all of those things. And it's under your app, your user, app data, packages, content delivery manager, local state assets. It's all in the link. You can find it in there. But if you go in there, there's a bunch of seemingly randomly named files with no extensions. You can take all of those files, though really for the pictures, it's going to be anything over, 100 kilobytes, 200 kilobytes, something like that, bigger files. Drag them off someplace else, rename them all to JPEG, and voila, that's all the Spotlight images that your machine has. So this is exactly what I was looking for. This is perfect. And so it has both horizontal and vertical, because if you've got a tablet, you can slide it either way, and they've got both versions of each of the pictures. It was great. The process is super ugly and crappy, though. And so I was looking at this, and again, it's pretty prescribed. I mean, it's just logical steps. And I started thinking, I can script this. This is a job begging to be PowerShelled. I can do all this. I can go to that directory. I can do get child item where length is greater than blah. I mean, I'm on vacation on a beach in the goddamn Caribbean with an internet connection that I swear to God, at one point when I was doing the little Windows thing, was 16 kilobytes. 16 kilobytes was the internet connection that I had. But I'm reading this article and I'm waiting for it to load, and I'm figuring the PowerShell out in my head. I'm like, all right, do this, and this, and rename. And then I've done some PowerShell with images, with JPEGs, on renaming them and pulling out the EXIF information and stuff like that. So I already knew, I'm like, all right, I can get in there, because not all of the files were JPEG files. So I'm like, I was already thinking through how I was going to determine which ones were JPEG and all that kind of stuff. And it was, I was just having a good time. So this page is loading. And one of the rules of the internet, well, there are many rules of the internet, but one of the main rules of the internet is never read the comments. Nothing good comes from reading the comments. And because the page took a long time to load, and because I never read the comments, I didn't read the comments right away. But I was busy and doing my thing, and then I kind of got distracted. But on one of my machines, and the other thing is, if you've got multiple Windows 10 machines, those directories are not going to be the same. So I'd done it on one of my machines and did it on another machine, and I'm like, oh, this is very exciting, and I'm syncing it to OneDrive, so they'll soon. Oh, very exciting. But then I kind of wandered off. And then I came back and the page had finished loading and there were a bunch of comments. And sure enough, because I've probably never had an original idea in my life, in the comments, there was somebody who'd already written all the PowerShell that I had been doing in my head. So go to that article, windowscentral.com, how to save all Windows Spotlight lock screen images. Scroll down into the comments, and there are several PowerShell scripts in there. So make sure that you look and see, which ones are more current. But there are absolutely ones in there that you could have work as like a scheduled task or something. Take those beautiful images. Again, I copied them into OneDrive. I've got a pictures Spotlight folder now. They're all getting synced into there. And then you can do something like have your wallpaper cycle through that or do whatever. But that was pretty good. I really like those pictures, and that worked out. The internet connection. So I was telling somebody that the internet connection at the place that I was staying varied between miserable and completely and utterly unusable. Those were my options. And again, and I get crap for that. Hey, you're on the beach. You shouldn't be playing on the internet. A couple of things about that. Number one, everybody vacations differently. If you don't want to use the internet when you're on vacation, rock on, but that doesn't mean nobody should get to. The other thing is I can only stand out, in the sun for so many hours all day, every day. I got to come inside and refresh. The other thing is if you're trying to do something trivial, like, check in for your flight to go home, things like that, having just a little sliver of internet is really super duper handy. And it's also great if you're, out for dinner and you and your wife are talking about something, you need to settle that argument. The internet's handy for that too. The other thing the internet's handy for, and this is honest to God true story. So New Year's Eve, we're at this resort, and big party, place is packed, and it was this great thing where you ended up having to sit with people you didn't know. And so my wife and I are sitting at a table with two people from Italy, and the husband spoke pretty good English, not great, way better than my Italian, but the wife didn't speak very, very good English at all. But on Windows Phone, but also on Android, there's the Bing Translator app that will do real-time translations. And the internet connection, at least that night at that location, was good enough that we could do that live. So like I would try to say something and she wouldn't understand it. So I could put it in the app and it would spell it out in Italian for her. And I could just show her the screen or whatever. Crazy cool technology stuff. So the internet was good for that too. So if you don't have that, if you do any traveling, that app is amazing. Android is not as cool on Windows. Windows actually has like a picture preview, and you can point the camera on your phone at something in one language and it will superimpose a second language on top of it. It's great. So that was a good use of the internet while I was on vacation. So, but there we go for that, internet on vacation, and so on and so forth. So those were the topics that I had. Shameless self-promotion is kind of short. All we've got right now is SP TechCon. That's February 21st through 24th in beautiful Austin, Texas. I will be there just for a couple of days. I got a Rackspace event that same week down in San Antonio. If you're going to be at SP TechCon, if you're not going to be at SP TechCon, what are you waiting for? Go to SP TechCon, sptechcon.com. If you are there, for goodness sakes, come find me. I'm not sure if Rackspace is going to have a booth, but I'm going to be doing some sessions. I think I'm doing 2 or 3 of them. The first couple of days, come find me, shake my hand, introduce myself, or don't introduce myself, introduce yourself. Would love to meet you, but you got to do it the first couple of days because then I'm going to take off. So do that. I have a couple of things. There's some other events coming up this year that haven't been decided yet, but hopefully I'll be doing some other things. So thanks everybody. Hopefully next week we'll have a little better content because I will have actually done some work this week. But thanks everybody. Thanks everybody in the chat room. Stick around. I'll be there for a couple more minutes. But thanks everybody, and I will see you next week.